Stevie J from Glove Up or Shut Up, and we're back with another interview. This time, Bubba Jenkins, undefeated Bellator lightweight. He's 4-0, and he was also a coach on the Ultimate Fighter 17 for Team Jones. So check out this interview. Peter H. and I talked to Bubba Jenkins. Oh, and if you want to follow him on Twitter, the info's right there. You can follow Bubba Jenkins, and you can follow us on Twitter as well. Just read across. That's it. Enjoy the clip. He is a 2011 NCAA Division I champion at 157 pounds. He's undefeated in his mixed martial arts career, and he just fought on Bellator 97. So please welcome to the line, Bubba Jenkins.
Hey, what's going on? What are you guys doing? I love this show. Love the saying, shut up and glove up. That's what I'm about right there. I like that.
Yeah, we were talking to your manager earlier today, and he said he really likes the name of it, too. In fact, he told us he goes all the way back to UFC 6, so you're partnered up with the right dude.
Oh yeah. I think that's one of the most important things about MMA is having the right handlers around you, because it's more than just getting in there and punching someone in the face. You gotta have people around you that you trust.
Absolutely. That's all what it's all about in the sport, because it is, at the end of the day, it's not just individual competition, it's a team sport, and what team you're with makes a big difference, and obviously it's made a difference for you being you're undefeated so far.
Absolutely. American Top Team keeps me on my P's and Q's, keeps me on my toes. Ricardo Boyle is one of the best coaches out there, so I'm in the right place at the right time, and I'm just feeling good about the future with my team and with the career.
Yeah, and speaking of right place, right time, I want to jump back a little bit to your collegiate days, because you actually started out at Penn State before you became a Division I All-American champion at Arizona State. So tell us a little bit about that transition, because some of the bios I've read out there say you felt like you were out of place and you were the black sheep. Is that your assessment?
Well, yeah, you can say black sheep, no pun intended. I was not recruited by the new coach that came in. I was one of the top recruits in the country coming out of high school, and I had every school and every coach in the country recruiting me for wrestling except maybe one or two coaches, but I was the number one recruit in the country. And Kel Sanderson was one of those coaches. He came over from Iowa State. Once he got there, we just kind of had a riff-raff. We never really had a verbal altercation, but like I said, he didn't recruit me coming out of high school. I guess at that time, and even when he came over from Iowa State, I wasn't one of his guys. I didn't have that persona. He likes those quiet machine type of guys, and I'm one of those guys that is not quiet. I break machines. I used to destroy toys all the time. I'm not, I wear my emotions on the sleeve, so I wasn't one of his type of builds. So it was more comfortable for me to move off and go to Arizona State after already being at Penn State for 4 years and being a NCAA finalist for them. He just felt like, he was more Penn State than I was, and Penn State felt the same way. So it was release me or, just drop me off, pretty much on the corner, really. And so after they released me, I went off to Arizona State and ended up pitting the Penn State kid in the finals. So it was pretty well-written story by God.
Yeah, that's poetic justice, I suppose, when you consider how it works out. And of course, both schools are known for turning out wrestlers that go into mixed martial arts and have successful careers. I mean, the list at both places, and especially Arizona State in the last couple of years, has gotten an outstanding reputation. So I'm sure some of the guys you were with your final collegiate year are guys that you see in the octagon and the cage anywhere you go now.
Absolutely. Funny story is Phil Davis was my host on my recruiting visit to Penn State. That's one of my best friends to this day. It's one of the guys that I talk to in the sport, about different loopholes and different things that I may or may not understand. He's one guy that has always been there, even at the beginning of, my supposed to be good college career. He was my influence. So, yeah, man, and being in the Arizona State locker room, you see a lot of those guys, MMA guys, come back and get a little wrestling in. So it's like, man, you see, all the guys that, or on UFC or champions right now that went to the two schools that I attended. So I'm in a good tutelage of line.
Yeah, it's a championship pedigree, and you're going to work your way to a championship title shot in short order in Bellator, I'm sure. But before you even got there, you were actually seen on The Ultimate Fighter, the Jones versus Sonnen season. So talk to us a little bit about that experience of being an assistant coach.
Oh, man, that was awesome. To be out in Vegas for 7 weeks was a little bit too long because everybody knows has been in Vegas. if you go to Vegas for longer than maybe a week, you're ready to leave. You know, Vegas will eat you up. But being there for the competition and being there with Boris Jones and rubbing elbows with all the guys in the industry that are really doing it. You know, Dana White was there, Mike Tyson was there. You know, it was obviously just a big shot for me as far as my career goes. Is, you know, those guys on the show that are well more advanced than me in my career, and me being an assistant coach, they had to ask me questions and they had to ask me things. So, I mean, it was just a really cool experience for me. It wasn't like I was shell-shocked of the leadership role because, you know, I'm a natural leader, and that's something that I just kind of, you know, when I see something that's wrong, I just say it. You know, I don't really think about, oh, you're too young or you're too this or you're too, I just kind of, hey, that's not right, you know, or this is how we should do it. So it kind of really got me a good opportunity to really coach some of the guys in MMA that are really going to grow up and be champions. And from our show, we had a hell of a season of, you know, great fights and great competition. So, I mean, I was just proud to be a part of, you know, Tough 17 with all the guys that I feel like are going to be beasts later down the line.
Now, obviously, it wasn't your weight class that season, so that didn't necessarily work in your favor. But did you feel at any time like, you know, maybe you're not just being an assistant coach, but you might also be getting looked at by UFC for a potential spot?
Well, yeah, I didn't really think about it that way. I was there really to help coach the guys, so I kind of let them be the focus. You know, I was out with a fractured jaw during the same time as the Ultimate Show was coming out, Ultimate Fight Show was coming out, so I wasn't really focused on myself at that time. You know, I think it would have been a little bit selfish of me for them to have, hey, you come out here and coach these guys, and then, you know, we got some eyes on you too. You know, I was definitely just all about the guys and trying to get the champion out of our locker room. And, you know, we got the main win. We didn't get the one we wanted, but, you know, it was a great experience either way.
Mm-hmm. And what were your impressions overall when it was all said and done and the finals were over? What did you think about Kelvin Gastelum coming out the way that he did?
I thought it was doing what a wrestler does, man. And the thing about it, I had Calvin in his prelim, you know, and I didn't think, you know, the technique was all that great. You know, his wrestling was really, really good. And I had him in his prelim, and I just saw so much heart in him. You know, he had, you know, tremendous heart. You know, he didn't really go out there and win with so much finesse and technique and everything like that. The guy in his prelims was kind of banging on him, and he was, you know, they were fighting. There was a brawl, and I can just see the heart in him. From being in his corner, I could see the heart. So when we were making our decisions in the back, I was like, hey, you know, he's a wrestler, and he's got something that you can't measure. He's got something that you can't see, that no one else can tell you. You know, you can't tell how much heart a man has until he's out there in the cage. And I could see a lot of it in him. And I know that with these 2-round schedules and the way that the Ultimate Fighter show was set up, it's going to take a guy with some wrestling ability to get a takedown and maybe end that period, or somebody with some heart. You know, and those two recipes for the show was what was going on. And I sat down with Bones, and I was like, John, you know, he's a wrestler, and, you know, he's got a lot of heart. He's got this, he's got that. I think we should put him on our team. And he was a little bit later down the line because of the guys who were a little bit more technically sound, or a little bit more experienced. But he was still somebody that we had on our top 5 to be like, hey, get this guy. I mean, at least in my head, on my list, he was in my top 5 of, we need to get this guy. He's a wrestler. He's got heart. That's 2 recipes that you can right off the bat win with. So it was just a great experience, and I thought it was a good fight. You know, Uriah, I thought Uriah was going to go out there and beat him up with his hands, but I also got to meet and know Uriah a little bit, and I just felt like in the championship, if Calvin put a little bit of his wrestling ability towards taking him down and not really letting Uriah strike, then it would be much better fought out for Calvin. So and that's the way I saw it playing out with a good procedure from him was the way it planned out. So it was good.
Yeah, it was very interesting that it worked out that way in the finals and that Kelvin was able to pull through. But I think a lot of people thought Uriah Hall was the favorite the whole season long. And it just seemed like in that moment, maybe the moment got a little too big for him, which as a fighter yourself, you know, you understand that pressure of being in the cage and having to live up to those expectations right when the moment comes.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to say that he's, you know, a mental giant or a head case or anything like that, but you can definitely tell on the show that, you know, if things were bothering him a little bit mentally more than it does for anybody else, it would affect him during his fights. You know, you can tell that just a little bit, you know, by the way he carried himself around during the show. And with seeing that, I think that played a big part in him not really fighting to the Uriah Hall standard, him having a little bit of his own stinking thinking, is the way I call it, in his head while he was about to go out there. And you can't have any stinking thinking when you're trying to, be the best fighter and fight the best fighter.
Yeah. Now, interesting coincidence. I had a chance to talk to John Jones before Tufts UFC Fox on. Sorry, let me start that sentence over because I botched that completely. I had a chance to talk to John Jones before the UFC on Fox 6 in Chicago, just as The Ultimate Fighter was starting to air. And we had Bubba McDaniel on the show before as a guest. So I immediately had to ask Jones the question, hey, you know what? One of your friends is on the show. Did you know that was going to happen? He's like, no, I was totally shocked. I had no idea that Bubba was going to be on the show with me. So what was it like having, being on Jones' team, having both him and a guy he knows, and obviously there was a bond there between the two of them?
Oh, man, it was pretty cool. Are you talking about the bond between me and Bones or Bubba McDaniels and Bones?
Yeah, actually, either way, both ways, whichever way you want to address it.
Well, it was a little bit sketchy, a little bit weird. Not sketchy. I wouldn't use the word sketchy. I said it was a little bit weird to have the whole Bubba McDaniels and Bones thing, because all the guys knew, he would slightly be favored, not only because they fought together and knew each other, because they were actually friends. So in the game planning with certain things, or during the show with certain workouts and stuff like that, we would maybe tender to Bubba a little bit more than we would tender to the other guys, simply because of the connection with the head coach. But I don't think we favored him in any way where it affected his fighting or it affected his wins or anything like that. I think it was just a delicate situation with the fact that they were, ex-teammates or previous teammates, and then they had to be on the same show. And with me and Bones, man, it was just a real good connection. He's one of those guys that you can tell is just a real genuine person. He cares about people. He likes to be, around a lot of people. And that's my type of personality. We come from very similar backgrounds, and I don't have any brothers that are also in the league, like he does. It's, a tutelage of family members like that. But I got a big family, and a lot of them are pretty much athletes. So we had a lot to talk about and a lot to really just kick around. And I favor, the guys who are making it in the sport, who are also black and who are also coming up from a wrestling background. And after talking to Phil Davis and Tito Ortiz and Johnny Bones Jones, there was a lot of, us really getting to understand, what we need to do in the game, what people are expecting from us, what people, are going to give me as far as the pressure and hype. So it was really just good to get out there and talk to those guys, not even just learn from them, but just talk to them, pick their brains a little bit.
Very cool.
All right, well, Bubba, I got a question about The Ultimate Fighter, and did you ever see a scarier knockout than the one Uriah Hall did in one of his fights there? I mean, after that knockout, I can't imagine anyone on Team Jones saying, I want him next, I want him next.
that was something we talked about as coaches, man. We went home and we were just like, oh my gosh, nobody's gonna want to fight Uriah after that one. And it was even worse from a coach's aspect because the fighters were in the back, and some of them don't get to see that close up, or maybe they're in the crowd. We're there in the cage, and where Adam Stella landed, he kind of landed at basically at our feet. He got kicked in the middle and kind of landed towards where we were in the cage, and his eyes were completely rolled back. He was completely gone. So it was like, man, he was having a hard time breathing. So it was like he wasn't there mentally, and he wasn't breathing right. So it was definitely more scary for us as coaches, because that was our guy, and we saw the kick coming, slow. I mean, it was just a very very intense situation to be a part of, and to know that it landed flush. It was from an amazing striker like Uriah. I thought there would be more damages down the line just because of the way he landed, the way he looked, the way they carried him out. I mean, it was drastic, and it definitely sent a signal through the house. Guys were not, like you said, they were not lining up to fight Uriah.
Have you ever witnessed a scarier knockout?
Not in MMA. Not in MMA. In the streets, yes, but not in MMA.
Now, we all hear some crazy nicknames in mixed martial arts. I mean, we've heard the gamut, but this one here, the Unicorn Slayer, you have to explain that one to me.
Well, I'm not 100. I only have hunches on how I got that because so many people have started to make up their own things and their own explanations of how I got the Unicorn Slayer. Where I think I got the Unicorn Slayer is in college. I was like one of those guys, those world beaters. I would usually, my first match in college was against the number one guy in the country, number one 157 pounder, and I was upper weight class in my Coletta. I ended up losing 3-2, at Penn State in front of, probably 10,000 fans, and that was my very first match in college. So I was one of those guys that always really, really wrestled up to the top competition. I didn't beat Coletta, the number one guy, in that day, but when it came down to like the guys that I was supposed to lose to, or the guys that I was supposed to crush or get crushed by, I would wrestle really well. Towards the end of my career, I started beating all kinds of people. Before I won my first national championship, my only national championship, I had already beaten 4 or 5 national champions already, before I even got my own ring. So that's why I think they were calling me the Unicorn Slayer. I was beating the majestic, the better guys, the guys with, 1 or 2 losses, and they, they couldn't give up takedowns, and I was beating those type of guys, and I think that's why they called me the Unicorn Slayer. And to cap it off, the guy that I pinned in the finals was 38-0, so unbeaten, majestic. They even call him the Magic Man. He was highly talented in high school and hadn't lost all year. As a matter of fact, his only 2 losses in college leading up to that point were to me while we were on our team, redshirting together. Remember, I wrestled at Penn State with them. So his only losses were to me, so he was the unbeaten unicorn, majestic white with the beautiful hair, and I came out and slayed that ass, and that's where I think really people started punching the Unicorn Slayer in as my nickname.
Well, you're not only slaying them in college, you're slaying them in the cage as a professional too, because you're now 4-0, and you had that devastating TKO of Mike Barreras on the Bellator 97 card. So can you talk to us a little about that fight and how it feels to be such a hot prospect right now?
Oh, man, it feels good to be the top prospect. That's on everybody's wish list. I mean, coming out of high school, you want to be top recruited. I mean, coming out of middle school, you want all the high schools to be on you. So, I mean, to be a top prospect in the world of MMA, that's, something that I've always been dreaming of and being part of. And I just want to be the best, and that's kind of how I go about business and go about myself. And, with the fight this past week, on Bellator 97, it was a lot, on me mentally because of the pressure and the hype and, being that it was such a big show and all those all-star wrestlers on the card with Chandler and Askren and Morale and, and all the others. It was just for me, it was just you got to do it. This is the perfect setup. This like alley-oop come down the court, he throws you an alley-oop, and all you got to do is put the basket in the hole. Do what you do, be who you are, go out there and fight how you need to fight. And, just the anxiety of leading up to it, I went out there with a very high pace, very intense, and it kind of, with getting caught in the guillotine, it kind of got my lungs a little short because, I was being that it's the debut, I've been in great shape, doing all the right things, eating all the right ways, and, I was ready for the fight. But once I got in there and got hit with that guillotine and anxiety, I mean, my oxygen level zapped immediately, so that was, I felt like, a part of the experience. If I had maybe came in a little calmer or didn't get hit with so many guillotines in the first round, then I would have had a little bit more oxygen and things like that. So, I mean, it was just a big fight for me. I was excited about the results, and I felt like, I did the best of my ability on that night with, with me getting short of breath. I felt like within 15 seconds I was tired. And I've been doing rounds and rounds and rounds in the gyms, and in college I had a sports psychiatrist that tells me, whenever you get into that situation, that's an anxiety type situation. You just got to slow down and go with the moment. And I never really slowed down and went with the moment. I kind of just pushed through it and jumped through the guillotine and powered through the guillotine. And even after I got out, I never really calmed myself down. I continued to have such an intense pace. And that's just something that I'll learn from next time and be more prepared of for the September 20 fight in Phoenix, Arizona.
And that's actually was going to be my next question is tell us about your next fight coming up in Bellator.
Well, I haven't seen too much on the opponent, and I really don't want to say his name because I don't want to mess it up. It's a little bit,
Okay.
Of a different name, like LaRue Burley, Larry Burley or something like that. And no disrespect, I just don't know how to pronounce his name. I think he's from Arizona, so I'm pretty excited for the fight. It's in my old playing grounds back in Phoenix, and I'm not sure who else is on the card right now. I'm just kind of focusing on, getting to win number 5 and really, putting on the people that have been supporting me for the longest, just really helping them and really putting on for my career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like only a couple other fights have been announced for that card. Kurt Pellegrino and Saul Almeida, and Tom DeBlas is fighting on that card as well. But other than that, they haven't revealed a whole lot of the fights. So it's still a card that's taking shape, but you're going to be on it. So everybody needs to be at the Revel Casino in Atlantic City to check out that show.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's going to be exciting.
Mm. So now, have they offered you like a tournament spot? Is this in one of the tournaments, or is this just a fight on the card and you're still yet to enter a tournament?
Well, I'm still yet to enter the tournament. Me and Bjorn sat down and, with my agent, with Dave Thomas and everybody with Bellator, we hashed out a really good deal of just having a developmental program. As you said, I'm only 4-0, and even with that and doing okay in the cage, there's still little things that I have to get right before I get on that top title level. And I definitely want to live up to the hype. I definitely want to be that guy wearing the belt. So while we're on our way up, I don't want to leave any stone unturned. I want to make sure that I go through the right process. My coaches around me are telling me, yes, you're ready. We'll go to the next step and things like that. So the tournament will come later down the line. Right now, I'm just having fight after fight for Bellator, and I'm excited about it. The tournament, I look at it as nationals for college wrestler. In the beginning, all you worry about is that next guy, that next win. When the tournament comes around, you got your time to prepare for, one of the toughest tournaments in the world, and I'm ready.
Yeah, well, they call it the toughest tournament in sports for a reason, so take your time getting there. Don't jump into it too fast, because I'm sure if you get prepared and do it right, you'll be able to go far in the tournament, and perhaps we'll see you challenging Michael Chandler for the title down the line.
Yeah, man, that'd be pretty exciting. You never know. Things happen for a reason, so you just got to get in there, like I said, one punch at a time, one knee to the chest, and keep it moving.
Yep. Now, I want to throw to Peter in just a second, but before I do, I feel like there's an interesting coincidence coming up because you were on the Jones Sonnen season on Team Jones, and of course, we all know that John Jones beat Chael Sonnen when they finally had that fight, and here it is again this weekend. Chael Sonnen is headlining another card, this time against Shogun Rua. So, what are your thoughts on that fight in Boston?
I think that's a good fight, man, for Chael Sonnen. I think he does what he does, man. He's great for our sport, because he lets you know that, yeah, you have to still be a badass. You still have to, knock people out. But you got to entertain, man. A lot of people are worried about his mouth. Oh, he talks his way into another championship. Well, you be as entertaining as he is, or you be as daring or risky or as ballsy to say what he says and still get in there and fight, then, you don't have nothing to worry about. That's one of the, like I said, my mom told me, never count another man's pennies. I don't ever really look into Chael's situation. He's doing what he needs to do to feed his family, to win fights, or to get out there and get in the cage for the next fight, whether he's winning or not. But I think it's a good fight for him this time around. And, I'm going for Chael. He's a wrestler, and he was really cool on the show. He didn't have any kind of, the silver or any kind of, weird, like, people would expect, hey, how was Chael? Chael was awesome. We had a lot of great talks, a lot of communication. We were supposed to go to one of the college tournaments together, but, things happen. So, but I think it was a good fight for him. I think he's a good person, and, best of luck to Chael and his whole career. I like what he does because it leaves room down the line for people who do have a mouth and do have a fist to say what they want and get what they want.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Peter, I think you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
This might be a ridiculous question because you were Division I champ at 157, but what are you walking around at these days? Are you still around the 155, 160 weight as a walk around?
I walk around because, like you said, 57 was my weight class, but 55, as I've been around the gym, the guys at 55 are huge in my gym. And in their top team, those 55ers are really, really big. So, being with those guys when it's raining, doing the Romans, I try to bulk up a little bit to fill into my 155 weight class, because I do believe that, at some point I could possibly make 45, because I've been making 55 pretty easily lately. But I walk around at 170. 173 is when I know I've had a good weekend. So I'm on my way down to the 55. I start cutting weight about 4 weeks out, and it gets real smooth and easy for me, at the last week of transition. So the plan could be to bounce around later in the career. But right now, walking around at a good 73. cutting it down.
Now, what's your opinion of a fighter that goes to the weigh-ins and he doesn't make weight? Is that a slap in the face to the opponent, or does this guy need to go to a different weight class?
Oh man, that's an awkward question. That's so hard to answer. One, there's a lot of discipline that has to do with cutting weight. You know, from the outside looking in, from everybody else who is not a fighter or not a wrestler or a boxer who has to do with weight classes, you're just like, oh, well, just make the weight. But there's a lot of discipline that goes into making the weight. And sometimes, the guys are at the wrong weight. You know, sometimes they want to squeeze off as much as they possibly can so they can feel bigger to overcompensate for maybe not having as much skill as some of the guys at the level or weight that they're weighing in at. But I think it's a slap in the face to the sport, to the organization. You know, that they have to really scramble and to your opponent. You know, if you're off by a couple tenths, I can understand that. You know, but like when people come in pounds overweight, I'm talking about pounds overweight with no attempt and no trying, with the peanut butter jelly sandwich on the scale, that's when I feel like, you know, that's a little bit excessive. Us wrestlers, we don't live by that motto. You make weight or you don't you don't get on the bus.
Now, one of my favorite questions I ask is, what is your favorite entrance music to come out to?
My favorite what?
Entrance music.
Entrance
or
music.
Walkout music, yeah.
Some rap, of course. You know, brother ain't listening to too much country these days. So when I'm walking out, it's definitely something where it's like rap, hard, maybe a little Eminem every now and then, because he be having brother ready to kill somebody, you know, having me ready to do something to him. So, but I like Jeezy, Lil Wayne. I just recently started because Bellator show was so big and so exciting, and they were like, hey, we need your song, we need this, you know, stuff that I really haven't been prepared for. I was actually starting to listen to while I work out, to walkout songs, which fits me best when I'm in my mindset of walking out. And This Is Why I'm Hot by Mims is one of the songs that I like to walk out to. So something that just fits my mindset while I'm walking out is usually what I like to get into.
Hey, on a related but totally random question, do you have any thoughts on the Kendrick Lamar situation that came up in hip hop this week? How he made a name for himself by calling out everybody while he was guesting on somebody's song?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was. I didn't know Kendrick Lamar was that type of, you know, guy but that's the industry. That's competing. That's competition. You know, I like that. I would love for somebody to call me out in the game. It gives me something to fight for. When everyone, you know, is in line and just kind of fighting for the fight or for the paycheck, it kind of cuts it out and makes it a little bit dry. But when somebody's got something to say, or somebody, you know, is calling out, or I'm the best, or I'll show you I'm the best, that just gives people, all right, well, let's see it. Let's believe it. Let's be about it. Let's hear about it. Let's get into it. And that's the way I like to see it. I like the competition. I like the way he said, I got mad respect for the rappers in the game, and I got love for you guys, but it's competition. Y'all should already know what it is. I want to be the best. I will call out the best. I'll tell all of you guys that you guys can't touch me. And I think that's, you know, something that a lot of rappers do. You know, I'm the hottest, I'm the best, I'm the this, but that a lot of MMA guys, a lot of sports athletes don't really get into because of the whole, you know, you got to have an image. But you're a fighter. You got to act like a fighter. You know, don't blame me when a fighter starts acting like a fighter and I start saying I'm the best, or I'll knock you out, or, you know, I'll prove it, or I'll do that. You know, that's part of competing, letting people know that, you know, you really believe in your skills, or you really believe in yourself. And I think that's all that Kendrick was doing, was telling the game, man, I believe in myself so much that the top 10 guys can go kick rocks.
Mm-hmm. I think John Jones is actually the perfect MMA example of that, because some people take him as cocky and arrogant when he says things like, I'm trying to be the best ever in this sport, and I think I already am. But then he goes out and beats, you know, one light heavyweight after another. So it's like, until somebody knocks him off that throne, how is it arrogant for him to say he's the best? He's just calling it like it is.
A lot of people, like that movie said, a lot of people cannot handle the truth. Sometimes that's the only thing that sets you free, man.
Absolutely. So I want you to keep delivering that truth in the cage too, because you're undefeated and on the rise. And I think there are great things coming up for you in Bellator, and who knows where else the future might take you. So I want to give you a chance at this time to, you know, get out the plugs, not just upcoming fights, but social media, how people can keep following you and keep track on your career.
Yeah, man. I'm on Instagram at Bubba_Jenkins, on Twitter at 2SINSURR Jenkins. That's 2 Sincere. I did that on purpose. And I'm on Facebook at Bubba Jenkins, man. You guys can always look me up. You tweet at me. I tweet back, and I usually just have a good time. I'm not one of those guys that take things too serious. I love what I'm doing right now. I'm having a great time, having a great life, and all I do is train and beat people up. And you can do that. You usually walk around with a smile on your face because, you probably either just got beaten up or beating somebody up, and it's a good feeling to have after you're just grinding and training. And I just want to thank you guys for Glove Up or Shut Up for having me on. This has been an awesome show. You guys are really cool with your questions, and anytime we can do this again, just let me know and we'll wrap it.
All right. We'd love to have you back on, Bubba. Thanks so much for the time tonight, and continued success to you in the cage.
Thank you guys for having me. Awesome. It's been great.
Yep. It's been our pleasure. All right.